So our next speakers are Kirk Finken, video and podcast producer with Agriculture and Agri-food Canada, and Claire Bosnick, videographer and podcast producer, also with Agriculture and Agri-food Canada. So for Kirk's 35 years in the film, television, marketing, and communications industries, he has spent the past 15 years in government with a focus on agriculture and food. He is the creator and co-host of the First 16 podcast. Claire started working at AAFC while completing her Bachelor's of Film Production in Toronto. She's since returned to Ottawa, and after 5 years making videos on agriculture, science, food processing, and everything in between, she's moved to the podcast team to produce episodes of the First 16. Please welcome Kirk and Claire.
Thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks for this wonderful event. It's a real delight to be in person. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. So, got a quick question for you all, and you have to be honest here. I'm going to be honest with you. How many of you have got working with a risk-adverse organization in terms of your marketing communications? Just raise your hands. Yeah, okay, good. And how many of you have the delightful task of marketing something that is maybe not too sexy? Yeah, few of you, yeah. Well, we've got y'all beat because we work for the government. There's nothing sexy about it, and we have to try to make it a little bit interesting. You know, we were talking earlier about with Michelle here about, you know, where do you find your information? Do you find it on government websites? No, you know. So, you know, we're going to talk to you a little bit about our experience of producing this podcast. We're 20 episodes into it. Yeah, next week, and it's been an interesting ride, and we'll just share with you some of our lessons learned, and also how we've, you know, some of the tools that we're using. And but I think what we'll start with is kind of maybe if some of you haven't heard the podcast, I'll explain to you what it's all about. Okay, so yeah. So and try something new. We always end each episode with that, because that's kind of what we're trying to encourage people in our ag sector to do, is try something new. So a lot of you will be familiar with this curve. Yes, have you seen it before? Yeah, okay. Do you know where it came from? No, okay. Everett Rogers, a social scientist from the States, developed this. It's based on his theory of the diffusion of innovation. And so basically, he was specializing in how ideas and technology moved from farm to farm to farm in rural US. And he came up with this theory of you know, every society, every community, every group has all of these five people, or five types of people in that community. And of course, we use this in business. We use it in marketing all the time, but it actually comes from agriculture, which is wonderful. And I was delighted to discover that. And as you can see, the first two categories there are innovators and early adopters, and those two things add up to 16%, and that's why we called it the First 16, because that's who we felt we wanted to tell stories about, and who we felt was also going to be our audience. And it's a little obscure for people when they say, "Whoa, what the heck is this First 16?" But that kind of explains it there. So we'll go to the next one. And so what's it about? So I told you, you know, it's nothing sexy. So that first one there, new policy and program responses to current issues. Well, that's really, you know, wow. another way of saying it is like, you know, what's happening in our sector? What are the really important issues that are happening? And how is our department reacting to that, right? How are we supporting that? How are we, you know, funding that? That's kind of what we're talking about there. But behind all that, like, look, our department, it's 5,000 people strong. There's 20 research centers across Canada. All right. This is the brain trust of agriculture. And this is where we've got super, super smart people working on the issues of the day, you know, from plant varieties to water and soil management and all of that stuff. And so we've got innovators. We have the corner on innovation. Well, maybe not the corner, you know, of the market on it, but we certainly are a hub for new ideas and innovative solutions to current issues. So, you know, we've got how many? A few, like maybe 500 pure scientists, and then, you know, the rest are, and then another 3,000 people working to support them. So we've got a lot of smarts that we can share with our sector. Okay, and our sector, as you know, is pure innovation, right? I mean, from the farm to the food processors, it's just fantastic. All of the you know, the new ideas, the plant varieties, the solutions to, you know, old problems that are just coming forth all the time, and we're there to help tell that story, and tell that story as to how our department intersects with it. So, and we're talking with agents of change. We're looking at shifting demographics and trends. We're even looking at things that are affecting our farmers, for example, with mental health, right? So we've looked at different issues concerning mental health. We're open to, you know, what we want to be talking about, the different techniques, creative techniques to expand markets for Canadian food producers. And then, you know, talking with people that have also benefited from our funding, right? So some of the success stories, and Bruce, we were just talking a little bit, he's done some of that work in video, and, you know, we hope to be doing the same thing in through the podcast. So here's just a long list of the kinds of topics you can kind of see. And I won't go through the whole thing there, but I just invite you to, you know, Google the first 16, go and take a look at the different content that we've got there, and I'm sure there's going to be something that you're going to find interesting. So why did we decide to do a podcast? I think that's one of the questions that you want to ask yourselves here. And before I jump into that, you know, I think it's important to think about our organization being, you know, it's obviously it's unique from you have more in common with each other than, say, for example, with the federal government in terms of you know, organizational structure and size and mandates and stuff like that. So you know, we want to help you today to answer that question of, like, why would you do this? For us, look, I just explained, you know, what the sector is all about. We see it as innovation. Part of our mandate of our organization is to stimulate and drive innovation in our sector. Okay, that's written right in our mandate. The other thing is why we decided to go, you know, into podcasting was, or try this, was because of the truck and tractor factor. I was shooting a video don't know, maybe 4 years ago, and the working with a farmer out in Saskatchewan, and he was just talking about all the different things he was downloading before he was going out into the combine to do the harvest. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. And so it's like music and webinars and podcasts. I'm going, okay, this is, you know, anybody who lives on a farm lives at least 15 minutes out of a city. So they're hopping in their truck and they've got 15 minutes that they're going to listen to something. And so I just kind of thought, okay, well, that's, this is the right medium for this audience. It's not all, obviously our sector is not made of all, grain and oilseed farmers, but it seemed to me that part of our audience was hungry for this as well. I live in a rural community, and my work in the community, I was always with working with farmers, and they were all saying, yeah, we get our information mostly from our associations, but yeah, we love webinars and we love podcasts, and they're saying, here's the solution for us. So, and I felt that a podcast was something that was ideal for, stimulating innovation, because it's about a discussion. It's not about a pushing of information. It's really, to engage the mind. It's to engage the curiosity and imagination. And then it's also really a great medium to do a deeper dive on topics, right? So, typically in government, we, some of the tools we would use in the past or we still use our, news releases, and then we've got the science papers that we publish and videos, but not a lot of people read those science papers, and videos, we tend to, keep it fairly short. And as well as the news releases, they tend to be fairly, short in terms of the content. This medium really allows for a nice deep dive on different topics. And then in a way, for me, within government, it was an opportunity. This medium is an opportunity to kind of break that mold, the government mold, and challenge it a little bit, the way that we do our communications. So how the heck we did it? I mentioned that we're a risk-averse organization, and that was kind of one of the main challenges, and how we needed to kind of structure this thing and how we needed to approach it. So we presented it in a variety of ways to our stakeholders, our internal stakeholders, our senior management, and we, put together beautiful PowerPoints, and we all sorts of data and stuff like that. And they all nodded and kind of, yeah, well, and they got kind of tired of me talking to them about this podcast idea. And then one of our team members, who is the original producer, who's away on parental leave right now, he said, you know what, let's just do a pilot, okay? Because they'll hear what it's about, and they'll hear the tone of it, and they'll really understand it. And that was probably the smartest thing that we did, because then people had something to react to, and something tangible that they could shoot down if they needed to shoot it down. The other thing that we did was we said, like, okay, we want to test it. And of course, in marketing, we always want to test what our ideas and test our campaigns. And there's formal ways of doing that with focus testing and all that sort of stuff. Well, we can't really do that too much with government, a little bit, but I just decided that it's probably a good idea for us to get some people internally within our organization who I knew were, they were podcast enthusiasts. They'd already talked to me about that. B, they were super, super smart people who are really engaged in their sector and they were, you know, people who thought outside of the box, and they were brutally honest with us. So we started sharing with them our ideas for episodes. We started sharing with them episodes, and we started getting that kind of feedback loop so that quickly we could improve the quality of it and make sure that we were, you know, hitting the audience in the right way. And I think what Doug was mentioning earlier was, you know, the right way is to have that kind of emotional and that rational information, that good balance of that. So we got some great feedback from our focus group internally. And then, you know, we also worked hard at putting our own people at ease, you know, to make sure that they knew that our podcast was going to work. And part of that also, part of the process, we realized that our audience is actually our subject also. So it's a really nice loop for us. We, you know, talking about the innovators and kind of the first majority there, the real thought leaders of our sector, those are the people who we want to talk to. Those are the people who are going to be interested in this. They're the people we want to interview as well. So that became also a really nice little feedback loop for us. And then the other part of it is just, you know, how do you establish a repeatable structure and process so that you know, you're not investing a ton of time into the thing. You want to be able to invest the time to do it right, but you also, you know, there's, I think with podcasting, and you mentioned it there, Megan, you were working on a podcast, that it actually takes a lot of time, and you can actually go down a lot of rabbit holes with the thing too. And so you want to be able to figure out what is that repeatable process that you can do.
My stuff now. Oh, sorry. You'd think I'd be better at the technology, considering that's what I do. So tools that you need when you're producing a podcast. Again, these are just, this is what we started out with, but we found a lot of these things really, really helped us. So if you can splurge for them, we highly recommend. First thing first, obviously, quality microphones. We use Yeti mics for Kirk and our other host, Sarah. The host audio is really key here. When we started out, we thought, oh, we need to match that with the guest audio. So we were mailing people microphones. That gets really complicated real fast. People don't mail them back. It kind of limits who you can record with, when you can record, because, you know, your other microphone's still stuck in BC and you've got an interview to do with a guy in, you know, PEI. So we stopped doing that. We realized that it's really just better to have quality host microphones. People are really forgiving in podcasts. They know, especially if you're doing an agriculture podcast, you know, they know that your producers are not in, you know, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. They're probably out on the farm. They might be phoning you because, you know, maybe you've got an older producer who doesn't really know how computers work too well and you have to do phone interviews. We've had to do that. And we found that people are very forgiving because the information is still there and it's really good. And it almost lends a sort of authenticity to it. You know, they can tell that you're talking to an actual producer if they're on the phone and it's a little garbly and they sound like they're in the middle of a wheat field. So it works out there. Host audio is definitely your key, or then guest audio. Now we try to record as much as we can using Squadcast. You can use Zoom, you can use Skype, but we really like this program because, for one, it's browser-based. So you just send the link to your guests. They don't have to download anything. They don't have to create an account, link it up to their Facebook, whatever. They just click the link and it takes them to the page, essentially. It also gives you, as the host, a lot more control. You can see what microphone is hooked up to what like their audio output. So if they're talking and you can't hear them, you'll be able to see, oh, it looks like it's trying to connect to a headphone that you don't have plugged in. So you can do a little bit of that troubleshooting a little more with this one, whereas with Zoom, you just can't tell what the program is, you know. Another thing with Squadcast that's really nice is it records to your computer before it uploads. And it does that on everyone's computers. So for example, if you've got someone with really bad internet, which again, farmers out maybe in the middle of nowhere, they're not going to always have the greatest connection. With Zoom, you get it choppy a lot. You might have to ask them to repeat lines because you drop the connection. Squadcast records temporary files to everyone's computer, so every individual person, and then it uploads everything at the end. So even if your connection drops or it looks like they freeze, you won't get any of that problem with the audio. So that's really, really, really nice, especially if you're doing things in the age of, COVID and lots of digital stuff. And the last thing as well, it records everyone separately on separate tracks. If your phone rings during a guest's really great sentence, you're not going to have that on their audio track. So that's really nice. Then what we use is Simon Says for transcription. So we tend to make paper edits. Again, government, we have a lot of approvals. So we make a paper version of the episode first, run it by everyone before we start editing. And we're not, going back to square one and having to redo a lot of work. So Simon Says is really, really key because you can put the audio in and it's a great interface for correcting transcripts. It's also really good for making those transcripts at the end. There have been presentations where we've talked about, transcripts, how they're great for accessibility, which we need as a government organization, but also for your search engine. There's nothing worse than finishing an episode, feeling like you're done, it's great, you're about to publish, and then realizing you have to sit down and listen to it and type out everything they're saying. So Simon Says really helps you get right out of the gate at the start. It's a great service for sure. And then I use Adobe Audition to edit the episodes. So putting everything together, it's great for cleaning up sound. It comes with a bunch of free sound effects. So it's a really great program. And then lastly, we use Transistor to publish the episode. So that keeps track of, it's just a nice tool for being able to kind of disseminate to a lot of different websites at once. It'll put it on Spotify, it'll put it on iTunes, everywhere that podcasts go. You can upload thumbnails with it. You can schedule publishing dates. They're all things that you can do manually, but it's a really nice system that automates it. It gives you great analytics too for seeing, where your viewers are from, when they're listening, when they're downloading. So yeah, those are kind of the tools that we use. Our trials and tribulations. So a couple of obstacles we've had to overcome that hopefully we can help you not have to go through or overcome as well. As Kirk said, we're very risk averse in the government. We don't want podcasts that make headlines because that usually means something controversial has happened. So everyone's very kind of nervous about new things. So we had a lot of that, like Kirk said, the pilot episode is really key, and just people get less nervous over time. We used to have so many approvals and vetting processes, and people would read the paper edits and then they'd say, well, that sounds kind of weird. And we'd be like, well, we can't change that because that's how they said it. And trust us, it sounds better when they say it out loud. And now we don't have to do that anymore because we're 20 episodes in. People trust us now. So it'll be a bit of a headache for the first couple of episodes, but people will learn, they'll gain that audio literacy. So that really comes in handy. And then you can also have people who get too excited about it. Everyone wants to put their ideas in. Everyone's coming at you and saying, oh, hey, let's do this episode or that episode or the other. And Kirk, I think you can speak a little more about that, but it's you kind of get too many fingers in the pie and you have to calm everyone down a little bit. So that can be something as well. You get two opposite spectrums there. Interviewees as well who want to read their answers. We've had that a couple of times where we'll get ready to interview a person and we'll send them some questions just to give them an idea of what the interview is going to look like. And you can tell that they've typed out their answers on a document and they're starting to read them. And it's fine. It's not the most conversational, which is kind of what you want in a podcast. So really having those, it's great to give an idea to your interviewee of what you're going to ask, and you can even give them sample questions, but always, especially if they're reading, try and think of questions that maybe even that aren't something you'll use in the podcast, but just something that will get them excited to talk about their thing. Once they're excited, once they're confident, like, oh, this is my specialty, this is what I'm talking about, that makes it a whole lot easier for them to stop reading their document that they've typed up. So that's a handy thing to have. Translations. How many people here do services in both English and French? Is that something that's real? Yeah, okay. So we obviously do too, being the federal government. Obviously, if our interviewees speak French and English, that's a bonus. They don't tend to though. So what we have to do is we have to get things translated and then dubbed with voice actors. The key thing with translations is we know French. French is wordier than English. And it's a lot wordier than English if you use translation services that are used to, our translation makes speeches, they make paper news articles. They've never really done podcasts because that's not really a government thing. So a lot of times we tend to get back products that are very, very wordy and very, very formal and very not conversational. And then usually what we have to do is we have to kind of go through and give it almost like a informality pass, where you have to rewrite it how people are speaking it aloud. It's a big difference, but it really, really, really helps because it helps the voice actors sound so much more natural. It's the difference between having a conversation and giving a lecture at a university. And it helps to match as well. Our hosts are very conversational. We have Kirk and Sarah, they're two people. They talk together a lot. They banter back and forth. If they're very casual in their conversation and their questions, and then we have a host who sounds, or a guest who sounds like, they're giving a speech at a ceremony. It doesn't match. It sounds weird to the audio. So it's pretty key to have good translations and also good voice actors. You don't want someone, we had one a couple of weeks ago who kind of sounded like she was speaking to a kindergarten class. Like great talent, but not the vibe that we were really going for. And we got that one re-recorded, and we asked them, hey, can you do it more just like she's talking to like a farmer she knows, that kind of thing, conversational. And it was so much better. And it took an episode that we were like, we don't know about this one. And we were like, wow, no, this is actually a really good story. And the content didn't change at all. We just tweaked some of the, the slang and the lingo, and we got a different voice actor and a different kind of form of dress. And it really, really, really helps. So super key if you're getting translation. Don't maybe get the only francophone in your department to do all the recordings. If you can splurge for voice actors, they add a whole lot to it for sure. And then for me, I have technical problems. You're always going to have technical issues. We're 20 episodes in, every time we boot up Squadcast, it's still the same thing. Someone's mic doesn't work, someone's can't connect properly. These are just sort of things that you have to write out if you are like on the technical team. Just expect them. If you're not on the technical team, know that your technical team is going to be dealing with these things. We've had to switch sometimes to Zoom because for whatever reason, Squadcast just doesn't work that day. Or, we have a farmer who can't use computers and we have to set up phone interviews. It's always good to have plans B and C, because you never know with technology, right? It could all just disappear one day and we'd have nothing physical. So working in that digital space, you really want to save often, lots of backups, different computers as well. But that's kind of one of the things that we've learned. And thankfully, thus far, we've never had anything huge problems because we're always saving and keeping that in mind. So then.
Thanks. So what does success look like for podcasts? I think a little bit, Doug Foley mentioned some things. Look, the kind of the industry standard is to look at the number of downloads that you get in 30 days and actually, downloads in 7 days and downloads in 30. And you'll be surprised at how low they are, just like in the industry standard. Just to give you an example, the top 1% of podcasts have 3,000 or more downloads in 7 days. The top 5% gets 560. The top 10% is 230. And the median is actually 30 in the first 7 days. So I think that number also may be skewed because you have huge podcasts, obviously, that have a huge following, but you have like how many millions of podcasts out there right now that have like next to zero, and so that's skewing that number. But it also gives you, like, for our own, we're like in the zone of on the first 7 days, we've got near like 150 kind of thing around there, and over 30 days we're averaging about 800. So it's not huge, but again, we're in the first year, and one of the things, or the second year, sorry, and the things is that it is a slow burn. And I was really happy to hear what Doug said in terms of wait till you get to the 24 to 32 episodes. That's when things take off, and we kind of feel that we're getting into that zone soon. Number of cumulative downloads per month as well. So we've got 20 episodes out there. We put a new one out each month, and 70% of the downloads in the month are actually past episodes. So people are finding the podcast, and they're just picking from the menu and listening to multiples at the same time. And then, one of the other things that, like I say, is indicators are a little bit more than numbers. And it's the engagement that we're getting as well. So we're starting to get good engagement from our sector, and the right people who we want to be talking to and talking about. They're the folks who are contacting us. And, for example, recently, a private company. Yeah, we're all right. Sorry, a company approached us to say, hey, we've got a really interesting story that would be interesting for your podcast. And in fact, it was, and it's a science-based company, actually collaborating with our department and with Natural Resources Canada on water. So it's water conservation, that sort of thing. And that's exactly what we want to be talking about. And so that, for me, is a great indicator that we're hitting the right audience, and that they're enthusiastic about being on our podcast as well. And then listen to what people are saying and how. And we've got a little bit of a sample here of a dairy farmer, some of the different organizations, the associations that you'll recognize there, and they're just giving us some good authentic feedback, saying, hey, this is working for us, this is good insights, and that's telling us a lot as well. I don't know if you've got any questions for Claire and I. I guess one of the other things that I have to say about and concur with what Doug said is that it's really important to have a good team, and Claire is an important part of that team, and so yeah.
So you talked about it's a vetting process.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you could speak to if you ever ran into the issue of having to censor a farmer who was maybe outspoken in a way that farmers can be very outspoken and speak their minds. But have you ever dealt with any backlash on someone who felt like they were misrepresented because you had to change what they said or edit out their speech or anything like that?
No, we've never had to do that. I think I think it's through the vetting process that we take an approach where we're not just doing a cold call. Now we're just calling up a farmer and saying, hey, I understand you've got a perspective to share on X, Y, and Z. We know that they're engaged in that topic. We know that they've been working with our department, or that they've been funded by our department. And so the likelihood of them, saying something about, F. Trudeau or something like that, or being a part of the convoy, and having something else to say about the government is low. And if, even if they do, we're not going live to air or anything like that. So, we can let them know that, that's maybe not an appropriate thing that we're going to include in the podcast. But we've never been into that situation ever.
To that. As well, on that kind of subject, we do the first people. So what happens is I edit the episode, I send it to Kirk and Sarah, our hosts, first to make sure they're good with it, and then I immediately send it to the guests. So they're actually the first step in our approvals process, mostly as well because we have a lot of scientists, right? And sometimes I have to cut down. Scientists like to talk a lot, and sometimes it can go over my head. So I tend to cut down a lot of what they say, and then we have to make sure that we haven't changed the science or misrepresented that, or, I've written up something for Kirk and Sarah to talk about on the topic that is false information. So the guests are always the first ones that get our episodes because we'd hate to get the whole thing approved and then send it to them and find out that all the information's wrong. So if they ever, that, like Kirk said, that's never come up, but if we always ask them, if you feel we've misrepresented something, we've left out a key piece of information, please do let us know. So we're always looking for their feedback as well, just to make sure that the information, they're okay with it and it's correct as well. So.
So first, I just want to compliment you on what you're doing. I think it's really cool to share the innovation because there are a lot of scientists who are good at science, but not good communicators. So trying to get that science communicated is really important. So an awesome initiative. And I guess in terms of new episodes, as you get to your 75th episode or further down the line, my recommendation would be that you expand a little bit beyond even innovation and have your regulators talk about what a great system we have in Canada. I think some of us in the crop input industry are finding that outside forces are causing CFIA and PMRA to question some of the things they're doing in terms of regulating our products. And we think that government regulators are doing a great job. May not be super sexy, but it's really good and important for us. So if there's a way down the road where you can share that kind of in an innovation space and reassure Canadians and even farmers that what we have is pretty darn good. I mean, I just think that that's something that could be a launch after you've established your audience. But I think this is really cool. People need to understand that government stuff is not always boring and it's really important, and government is us. And I think too many people don't remember that or appreciate that. So thanks for your efforts.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think we have to wait till the 75th episode to include something like that. There's absolutely an angle to that that's innovative, right? And there are our policy folks, there are the folks in CFIA who are doing some really groundbreaking work, and that's our goal, is to be talking with those folks and talk with their peers or somebody from outside government as well about that same thing, to have that dialogue going, because and I think that's kind of one of the things about, and it kind of touches on your question earlier, you want to choose the right people that are going to bring something new and some good insights to that topic, okay? And let them talk, and engage them in that conversation. And naturally, that stuff comes out, right? That there's some really amazing work that's happening, and it's pertinent to the whole sector. It's pertinent to all government levels as well, right? Yeah. Here.
Oh, thank you. My question was about, similar to kind of the questions previously, but how do you go about sourcing the topics for each of the episodes and creating a story around that as well?
So a variety of ways. We've got different streams of information that come to us. I think, we've got our senior management, our deputy minister and minister's office are even involved in saying, hey, you know what, we should do a podcast on this. We've got that kind of that informal panel of folks across the department that we reach out to, and they say, hey, or I ask them, what's new in your world, what's going on, what would be interesting. And then we've also got, just hot topics that are coming up, like, immediately right out of the gates. We were starting the podcast and we were into the pandemic, and our department had to shift in such a a huge way in the way that it delivered some of its programs. And that was very innovative in the way that was done. So, and then the other thing is that Sarah, my co-host, is she's a biologist by training, and so and she and I are both kind of always surfing, the media that maybe some of you are responsible for, and looking at all of the issues in our sector, and just kind of going, this, how can we connect this to some of our science? What are our scientists doing in that realm, or what are some of our economists or policy analysts doing to resolve some of these issues? Yeah.
So I have two questions from the online audience. The first one is from Ryan Ban. Your episodes are typically under 25 minutes and are released about once a month. How did you determine the length of your episodes and the cadence for your release schedule? What informs or influences this?
So the cadence is really a resource thing for us, and it's like, what could we feasibly put out on a regular basis? And regular basis is a really important factor in podcasting, right? You just have to keep on putting it out. We're not able every month to put one out because of in the government world, we have elections, and we also have each spring we have a new budget that's announced, and so we go into a blackout period. So there are periods where we can't maybe publish for 1 or 2 months, but that's kind of that determined that for us. What was the first part of the question?
The length of the episode, 25-minute length.
Well, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I just found the ones that were an hour long, I dropped off at a half hour. So, and I just kind of thought, well, if it's interesting enough, topics are interesting enough, you produce them, to that length, of 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. And I think that's kind of a period of time that people will have in their drive or to work, or from their farm to the town or whatever. I just thought that was kind of a good thing. Nobody told me that except for me.
So the second question I have is from Heather, Soils at Guelph, and she's asking, what's the best way to pitch an episode idea to you?
Contact us. Real simple. Yeah. And the same goes for everybody in the room too. We're here, really happy today to be sharing with you our experiences, our lessons learned, and hope that, there's going to be more, podcasts in our sector. We're also here to hear from you. If your organization has got a great story to tell, let's talk about it, and let's see how we can work it in. We are bound a little bit by, not bound a little bit, we're completely bound by this thing about being a neutral organization. We can't be seen to be promoting a company over another company. We can't be seen to be promoting, even, it's a little tricky with government advertising to be promoting this whole sector, right? We have to be kind of careful in the way we do that. What we do look for is to make sure that our department or another government department's work intersects with the work of a given company or a given organization. So if we funded, let's say, one of the research clusters on a specific initiative, yeah, we can absolutely do a story on that. If there was another company that came up with a really brilliant solution, an AI solution, and they approached us, but we couldn't really do anything about them. we would have to talk about AI just in general or other solutions in that space, but we couldn't speak about them specifically.
Do you find that you have to provide any remuneration for any of your, well, I think you call them producers?
Sorry? Yeah. Sure.
Do you need to provide any remuneration
No.
to those that you're interviewing?
No. Generally it's in there, I mean, we're speaking with our own folks on one side, one interviewee, and then somebody from outside. It's generally in their interest, right? To be, on a podcast. It's, again, it's part of, if you will, in the parlance of, this discussion here is part of their brand. So for example, the episode that's coming out, we've, speaking with one of our scientists who's a specialist in antimicrobial resistance in cattle. And we're also speaking with a veterinarian. So the veterinarian, it's in his interest to be, speaking about this and having that discussion with us. So there's a benefit to him. And it really only takes half an hour to 45 minutes or something like that for the interview, and yeah. But a good question, yeah.
First, how long does it take kind of from deciding on the topic and guests to like releasing the episode? And then also, in what ways do you guys promote your episodes or the podcast in general?
Okay, so I'll take the first one and then you can take the second part of that. Okay, so remind me again, what was it? The first question? Okay, so we kind of have broken it down to take, it takes 50 person hours per episode. So that's in terms of like the actual resource that you need. But of course, we're doing it in 2 languages, right? So that there's a lot of backing and forthing, and there's a lot of approvals. We're a very hierarchical. So I would say that, for an organization, a smaller organization doing it in 1 language, you might even be able to do it in like 30 person hours. It takes us generally kind of 2 months in advance to, like, we're producing, obviously we're working on them concurrently, several episodes, but it's about 2 months from start to finish, right?
Yeah, we tend to have our latest 3 episodes kind of yeah, sorry. Yeah, we tend to know 3 months in advance where we're going with the episodes, even if they're just ideas. We tend to like recording our guests 2 months in advance, if we can, just to get them there. The editing actually doesn't take very long. It's the approvals process that tends to take a long, long time. So we're usually like, this month I was working on the episode that's coming out next week, but we've been doing interviews for the fall, the upcoming episode, and we'll have different people will be working on the paper edit versus, I'll be editing. So yeah, I think like you said, 2 months, Kirk.
And then the other question.
Oh yes, I will do that. So promoting the podcast. So we do a variety of things. We have a social media team that we work together with. They handle all the Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We'll get them different things. We produce audiograms, we call them. So it's like a video representation of the podcast. So we'll pull out a couple of key quotes that we think will really hook the audience. We've got a nice, like it'll be like the text pops up alongside. It's a little animated. You can see the waveform moving. There's a little text bar. So we have a template that we do in After Effects for these. Highly recommend templates. They make it super quick. But basically we just plug in the text. We, change up all the time. So the text appears as the person is speaking. These are really super useful for, we just got an Instagram channel. So we've been using them on there, Facebook, Twitter. Beyond that, we tend to contact the guests when we're about to publish and say, hey, do you know, if there, maybe we had one who was working at McMaster University, I think. So I said, hey, can I have the contact information for your social media team? So if there's anything we can do, the latest episode that we had that came out was about a pilot plant project, and she talked a lot about one company that was kind of their success story. So we contacted that company, and they were really great. And they were like, oh yeah, we had a great time using that. So we kind of do our outreach more organically that way. We're always looking for more ways and better ways to promote, and we're still kind of figuring that out now that we've got the rhythm of producing down. But that's so far, I think, what we've tended to do. And I don't think I've missed anything, but yeah.
That's it. No. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite, and yeah.